What is going on, guys? This is Sin. So today I kind of wanted to go over all the staple cards that people might choose to play in the upcoming format and try to decide whether or not you should be playing them in your deck, because we all know how complicated deck building can be, and sometimes a card can be good in one deck but bad in the other, so it all depends. So yeah, before we go any further, I would really appreciate you if you could smash the like and subscribe button for me real quick. It takes like 5 seconds out of your time and it makes me the happiest human on earth. Anyways, let's get right into it. So the first card is Snatch Steal, right out of the ban list finally after all these years. The last time we saw it wasn't even that long ago. Actually, I was playing the game. But yeah, Snatch Steal is just like Change of Heart and Mind Control, a monstrous stealing card. It does target, by the way, so keep that in mind. But the ability to steal is a continuous effect, not an activated effect. So in other words, you actually can steal monsters that are unaffected by activated effects such as Expurli Noir. So keep that in mind, even though it's not going to be relevant because the Expurli Noir can just put it back on the bottom of the deck. So Snatch Steal might not do that much more than Mind Control and Change of Heart, even though the stealing is permanent. Ever since we got the introduction of Link monsters, it's not really like you have to be afraid of giving back the monster. So I want to say Snatch Steal is honestly on the same level as Change of Heart, if not, maybe a little worse, because, well, first of all, it gives life points to your opponent in time, even though that's irrelevant because you can just jump over and inflict a little bit of damage on the monster that you steal. But the big thing is that, unlike Change of Heart, this card can not only be negated, but also can be destroyed, and that is not in your favor whatsoever. It's easier to stop. And even though it is an equip spell and it is recyclable off of cards like Infernal Knight Renault, it's not gonna matter too much because normal spells are actually easier to search because of triple tactic thrust. So I don't really recommend playing Snatch Steal. I think Change of Heart with thrust is a little smarter. And Mind Control, even though it's a 3, nobody's gonna play it because Change of Heart is better, and you don't need to play any more than one Change of Heart because you're probably going to be playing 3 Thrust. So that is the way I see it. I would stay away from Snatch Steal and Mind Control, honestly. Anyways, next up is Pancratops and Fenrir. It's actually funny that Pancratops was always a playable card in the side deck, but people, for some reason, didn't want to play it as an unsearchable random one-of. But now that it's a 2, for some reason, you know, it's starting to see more play. And it makes sense because it is very good against mid-range decks overall. I mean, it's the kind of card that you can side in against basically just everything, as long as it's not an FTK deck, and it's always going to be doing something good. I mean, it's a 1 for 2 because you summon it and then you can jump over a monster and then use its effect to destroy another card. So it interacts very well with boards going second. I like Pancratops a lot. It's actually better than Fenrir going second, but unlike Fenrir, it's useless going first. So if anything, it's only there in the side deck as a 2-of, and I think it's definitely going to be filling in some nice niche spots. So yeah, I do recommend side decking Pancratops, but make sure that your deck doesn't have like weird restrictions of, you know, you're not summoning like non-something monsters. Like, I remember when I was playing Math Mech, Pancratops was awkward for me, even though I could search it because then I wouldn't be able to use the effect of Transcode. Or now in Raid Raptors, I can't really play Pancratops because Fuzzy Lanius locks me under Raid Raptor only for the whole turn. So keep that in mind with a card like Pancratops because you are summoning it. It's not like hand traps or board breakers, spells and traps. Now for Fenrir, obviously this card is still just as good as it was last format. It's not like it changed, unlike Pancratops. But this card is universally good going first and second. One thing that I will have to say about Fenrir though is that going second, it is actually way worse than before after Phantom Nightmare, because if you summon the Fenrir, it will just get immediately destroyed by the Promethean Princess, and then you wouldn't even trade your Fenrir for anything. You're basically just going strict neg 1 without getting anything in return, so I don't really recommend it too much. I think Fenrir is just a little underwhelming, at least going second against Fire King, so hand traps are going to be your best call. But Pancratops, on the other hand, even if your opponent tries to go Promethean Princess Grave Effect, you can chain and then destroy something. So that's the reason why I prefer it. Anyways, for the hand traps now, obviously Ash, still insane, right? Nothing changed with this card, it's still really good. It's the only card that can hit combo, mid-range, and stun decks even, or control decks, or decks like Labyrinth, for example. Ghost Bell is another card that is kind of like Ash, but in a worse way by far, because Ash is like super generic and sometimes it's a blowout, like against Despia. But Ghost Bell, it's just that you play it for Labyrinth because of Big Welcome, because no other hand trap can really hurt that deck. Yeah, that's honestly the only reason, and I don't even think Ghost Bell is that good, and I can understand a world in which you would want to side 3 copies of Ghost Bell really just for one single card and one single matchup. Now, the bad news that I have for you is that Ghost Bell is actually way worse than it was before because of transaction rollback, because now the Labyrinth deck can actually copy the effect of the Big Welcome even if it gets Ghost Belled, because even though it's like once per turn, it doesn't matter. But either way, Ghost Bell negates the activation of the card, not the effect, so yeah, that's even worse. But I think Big Welcome is like you can only use once per turn. Either way, when you're copying the effect of a card, you are bypassing the drawbacks of like once per turn restrictions and stuff. But yeah, Ghost Bell is just not gonna save you, unfortunately. You'd rather play something else at that point. Bestials are pretty good against Labyrinth as well. And yeah, maybe not DD Crow, but yeah, I mean, Pancratops is actually really nice as well. Anyways, Droll, if your deck isn't like a super slow deck, Droll should be in your main deck 100%. I think this card is extremely good, regardless of how your opponent plays his hand out, because every deck needs to search except for Unchained. There are some decks that lose to Droll a little less than others, but for the most part, Droll is really, really good. And it's one of the only cards that can deal with multiple cards, a lot of things in once, because sometimes hand traps are just like straight up 1-for-1 trades like Valor and Imperum, and if your opponent hard drew the card he's trying to search, then it's not really good. But yeah, Droll, just like it can do nothing against Fire King if they just hard draw the Sanctuary into Island and then their first search is the Garunix, doesn't do too much. It's still something that can at least like put a break in their combo, because if they wanted to extend past that, they're not going to be doing that much. The worst case of Droll is still not too bad, but against Labyrinth it's obviously really, really bad, and against combo decks like Mana Dome, which completely dodged the ban list for some reason, Droll is completely cracked. So yeah, I'm a big fan. Anyways, Nibiru next up. I despise this card. I do not recommend it whatsoever in the main deck, and as a matter of fact, I think even in the side deck it's actually really bad. I can't think of a single deck that really loses to Nibiru. Honestly, like I keep saying that only the player loses to Nibiru, never the deck, and I stand by that. I really mean it. I can't recommend a card that doesn't really outright beat any deck other than like Salamangreat. Anyways, Valor and Imperum, obviously these cards will always be good options. They're not on the same level as Ash and Droll, obviously. Imperum being much better than Valor for obvious reasons. Even though in the Fire King deck, sometimes Valor is actually a little better than Imperum, because you can normal summon it and then turn it into like an El Mirage, and then either crash and then summon the Garunix, or destroy it with the island and then summon the Garunix. So that's actually kind of cool for the most part. Again, infinite impermanence doesn't lose out to triple tactic talents and thrust or call by the grave. It can be drawn for turn and it's really good. Imperum will never disappoint. It's definitely in the top 5 best hand traps at the current moment, whereas Valor is definitely much worse, honestly. But still, these cards should probably be in your main deck, but not in your side deck. I would side deck cards that are like very high impact, if anything, not like low impact cards. So if you're not main decking these cards, don't play them whatsoever. Now next up would be triple tactic talents as well as thrust. Talents is not super great going first, because if you don't get a hand trap, then you're going neg 1, and if you bricked, then yeah, Talents is really not helping you at all. Whereas Thrust, on the other hand, going first, it's kinda just actually horrible unless you're playing Unchained, and going second, it's much better because you can get just about any board breaker, actually. You can even get Evenly and use it right away, or you can get Duster or Lightning Storm. Going first, post game 1, it's also very good because you can get like Dimensional Barrier or different Dimension Ground, stuff like that, like Lingering, normal trap card Floodgates. That would be extremely good, or even Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon. So that would be like an incentive to play a card like Triple Tactic Thrust. But I would not main deck it, unless I'm playing Unchained. That's the only exception for Thrust. Talents, on the other hand, is the kind of card that I don't even know if I would side deck it at this point, because it's, like I said, much better going second. But if your deck is like a really aggressive combo deck, and the only way to beat you would be with hand traps, then Talents can be good. But I would not play this card generically at all. I don't think it's a super generic staple. I think this card is actually kind of overrated, if anything. I really don't like it that much. Now, speaking of Dimensional Barrier, should you play 3 copies of this card? I really don't think so. It would be a waste of a slot in your side deck because it does nothing against Fire King, which is going to be the best deck post Phantom Nightmare. By the way, this whole video is Phantom Nightmare format, not like this 1 month long format, like in between the new ban list and Phantom. No, we're not wasting time with that. Dimensional Barrier doesn't really hit that much. It's in the Labyrinth deck, you only play one copy of it because you can search it out, and in any other deck, you really don't care too much. Purely is a deck that really loses to D-Barrier, but who cares, because it's going to be seeing less play. Any other deck, I can't really imagine losing all that hard to Dimensional Barrier. So yeah, I would not play any more than one copy of D-Barrier. Anyways, Duster. Is this card worth playing? Probably not, honestly. I don't even think it's that good. Like, yes, I know it's hilarious because you would think that the card is insane against Labyrinth, but it's really not. Like, they have so many ways of, like, protecting themselves, and even if you have to, like, thrust into it, like, by the time you get to use Duster, like, you probably already played into your opponent's board, and then you already lost some resources. I would rather play cards that can be, like, a little more proactive. Like, Cosmic Cyclone, I actually think, if anything, that's better than Duster against Labyrinth. And just generically, I want to say, I can't really think of, like, a single deck that, like, hard loses to Duster. I mean, like, even Evenly can be better. And Lightning Storm is also not too great. And it technically has a worse effect than Duster. Like, you only really play Lightning Storm when you're already playing Duster. Sometimes not, because it also has, like, a Regeki-esque effect. But people are always playing around Lightning Storm now as, like, a part of their reflex when they're playing the game. So that's the reason why I like it less. Evenly, though, I think is actually pretty good. If your opponent is not ending on, like, Omni Negates, it can break a lot of boards. It's not super great against Fire King, though, because they can keep, like, the IP Masquerade up, banish everything else, and then they still have Promethean Princess in grave, with a Garunix in grave, Kirin in hand, and a bunch of hand traps, and you're still gonna lose the game, honestly, to that. I don't know if I'm a really big fan of Evenly against them, but against pretty much almost everything else, I think Evenly is good. Again, though, just like Duster, I don't even think Evenly is great against Labyrinth. That's the crazy part. I just want flexible cards that can be used right away and interrupt the Lady Labyrinth from setting the trap card, so that the Kukla can be devastating. Cards like Evenly and Duster don't really solve that, because if your deck, like, let's say, loses to D-Barrier, you would still lose to that. Again, quick play spell cards are probably better. And against Centurion, for example, you are never resolving Duster, Lightning Storm, or Evenly, because they're gonna King Calamity you. And Duster doesn't shut down anything, because they can chain their two monsters, and then quick sync, and then after that, King Calamity you. Because yes, the field spell makes your, is indestructible by card effect while you control a Centurion monster card. Anyways, Super Volley is next up, and I actually think it's extremely good. Not against everyone, but at least in the side deck. I would not main deck this card, honestly. But I think it's good against, well, first of all, Centurion. It's going to be good against other decks. It's good against Mana Dome if you have the extra deck space for, what is it, Dragon Knight Draco Equist. And it's also good against Rescue Ace sometimes. For the Guilty Gear Freed if they end on, like, Baron de Fleur. But obviously Dragon Knight Draco Equist can also be used. But yeah, Baron de Fleur and SPL Knight. So yeah, as long as you have, like, the 4 targets for it, then Super Volley is pretty much always live, because Garura and Mud Dragon already cover so much ground. So yeah, if you're playing against, like, a rogue deck, Super Volley is always going to be your best friend. Pot of Prosperity is a very interesting one. It really depends on the deck that you're playing, but in the Fire King deck, the deck is already super consistent to the point where you don't even need Prosperity that much, so you can actually live without it. And even, like, Sprite or Silent Forcer, decks that are super consistent, you can literally just not play this card at all. Or if you're just playing a bunch of hand traps, then Prosperity is just not really it. But if you're playing a bunch of board breakers and you activate Prosperity and your opponent randomly lets it resolve, and you get, like, a Super Volley or Droplet off the top, then you can break boards with it. So yeah, Prosperity is there for consistency and also board breakers, but again, with hand traps, not the greatest. Still a very good card though. It's crazy how even, like, at the fact that it's a 3, when Unchained was at full power, people were only playing 2 Prosperity, sometimes. So obviously Book of Eclipse and Spellbound are both good against the same deck, so Purely and Centurion. Both of these decks are going to be seeing less play, so you can probably live without them, but I would still keep probably Book of Eclipse, just in case. I think it's maybe a little better than Spellbound because it's more generic, so if you have the choice between one or the other, probably pick the Book of Eclipse. And then for the going first card, Solemn Judgment, Anti-Spell, and Summon Limit. So Summon Limit is very specific to decks that either play the Snake Eye engine, because you get to send your Summon Limit to the grave and then you keep playing, so you can turn it off at any point. Or like Silent Forcer, because it only plays, it only summons twice and that's it. So it's a good card in that deck, but not really in any other deck. I guess Kashtira, now that they got 3 Unicorn. Anti-Spell is actually pretty filthy. It's really good against Fire King as well. They need like billions of spell cards to play, so yeah, Anti-Spell is nice. And Solemn Judgment is actually less good now because people don't really commit all that much now. now. It's just like one card combos, and they get to extend really well. They don't really have any power normal summons that you want to negate with Solemn Judgment either. And unless you're protecting like a Floodgate, Solemn Judgment isn't really there to like negate something really impactful. So if you have like Skill Drain and Solemn Judgment, then it's insane. But if you've got like Solemn Judgment and like a meaningless board, then it's not as good as like Anti-Spell with like a mediocre board. That's already better. But yeah, anyways, that's it for this video. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know your thoughts about these cards in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.